Alright, example 1. Solve the radical equation for the value of x. You will know it is type 3. You will know you will need to use the x method when you have this lone x on one side. Okay? We have a lone x on that side. It's this extra x. Before, we only had x values underneath radicals. When you have an x that's under the radical and an x that is not under a radical, that is when you know we will have to do the x method. And that is because, in order to get rid of this radical, what must I do to both sides? Remember from last week? How do we undo a square root? Square it. If we raise both sides to the second power, then we will get rid of that radical, which we have to do. We cannot ever find the value of x unless we get rid of that second root. So we square both sides. On the left side, the square root and squared, the exponent and the radical cancel each other out, and we just drop down to 7x plus 8. 7x plus 8. What? Oh, 18, thank you. Just ignored the 1. Okay, and this is going to be equal to, well, x to the power of 2 is just x squared. And now we have an equation that has not only an x in it, but also an x squared. Whenever you see an equation that has x's and x squareds in it, that is a very good indicator that you have to do that x method. We can't get x by itself because there's two different types of x's. So we need to get everything onto one side and use the x method. So what would you like to do? You can either move the x squared over to the left side and then it's going to be negative, or we can move the other two on the left over to the right. Either one works. Which one would you guys like to do? Let's move the x squared. One less thing to move. So I'm going to subtract x squared on both sides. Okay? Now on the right side, it's easy peasy because they just cancel out and we're left with 0, which is what we want. We want it to be equal to 0. Now one thing you got to be careful of is, well, one, this x squared that we're subtracting over doesn't have any like terms. We can't actually subtract it from anything because there are no other x squareds. 2, remember we need to make sure it's an A, B, C order. So I don't want to put this at the end because whatever's in front of the x squared is the A value. So I want to make sure I put this in the front. Okay, so make sure you keep it in the correct order. Because you can't just have them in any order and just go A, B, C. So this would be negative x squared plus 7x plus 18. So see how my exponents go from biggest to smallest? So I know that this is an A, B, C order. And once you are here, we have to do the x method. It's the only way we know how to solve a quadratic. Okay, so in this problem, what's my A value? What number is in front of this x squared? Negative 1. My B value is positive 7. And my C value is 18. So this is what I'll use in my x. Up on the top, A times C. Negative 18. Negative 1 times 18 is negative 18. On the bottom, we put our B, 7. Then divide both sides by whatever A is. This time it's a negative 1. Do we have any questions with the setup? Setup's good? This is the hardest part. Two numbers that multiply to give us negative 18 add up to give us 7. So if you go take a look at your factor sheet and you go find the number 18, you have, where'd it go? 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Those are all the ways to make 18. But we don't want to make 18, we want to make negative 18. So I look at the bottom, I see that it is positive, which means all my positive numbers are by bigger of the two numbers. So these three little numbers should be negative. Now I look and I figure out which of these add up to 7. Negative 2 and 9. It's the only one that works. If you check the first one, negative 1 and 18 is 17. Can't be that one. Negative 3 and 6. That's 3. Can't be that one. It has to be negative 2 and 9. That adds up to 7. Negative 2 and 9. Okay, and then make sure you simplify. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 ends up being positive 2. 9 divided by negative 1 is negative 9. Now remember, these are called factors because the x method is a way of factoring. Our solutions are the opposite signs. So our solutions would be x equals negative 2, opposite of positive 2, and, that's a semicolon, in math that means and, x equals positive 9, because that's the opposite of negative 9. These are the two answers to this radical equation. There are two solutions. And you're done. Done. Ready for another? What did you divide by negative for? Okay, example 2. Radical equation. We know this is going to need the x method because what's sitting by itself on that side? An x. Okay, so draw your little waterfall down the equal sign. Whack. To get rid of our radical, we do what to both sides? Get rid of a square root, we square both sides. On the left side, that second power just gets rid of the square root. So you drop down everything underneath it. On the right side, x to the power of 2 is literally just x squared. Once you're here, you notice, oh, I have an x squared and an x. So I can't solve this normally. I can't just add the x squared over or subtract it and find my x equals. I have to do the x method. So you can either move the 11x and the 28 over, or you can move the x squared only. I like to only have to move one thing. So I think it's easier if we just subtract x squared and put it out front. Only have to move one thing, but you could move the other two to the right if you want. On the right side, that's just 0. On the left side, I have negative x squared plus 11x minus 28. See how that works? And I'm putting my that negative x squared at the front because that's my a value. Whatever's connected to the x squared is always the a value, so make sure that's first. A, B, C. Now the x method. Again, a is, what's in front?
Wait, quick question. What was the answer to number 1?
It was negative 2 and 9.
Just checking.
So a value, negative 1. Our b value, 11. 11. And our C value, negative 28. Draw your X. Let's fill it out. On the top of your X method always is A times C. Negative 1 times negative 28 gives you positive 28. Yep. On the bottom we get 11. We will divide both sides by negative 1, because that's the A value. We need to figure out how to get 28. What are all the ways to multiply 28? I think I can think of 3. 1 and 28, 2 and 14, and 4 and 7. That all? I think so. Which of these adds up to the bottom, 11?
Mr. Tucker, can I have it pass the restroom, please?
The top one, 1 and 29. That adds up to 29, adds up to 16. Bottom adds up to 11. That's our winner. 4 and 7. The left side, 4 divided by negative 1 is negative 4. Right side, 7 divided by negative 1 is negative 7. Do not forget, these are... What? Where's the 23? No, because negative 1 times negative 28 gives us positive 28. Yep. Those are factors. Our solutions are the opposites. So x equals positive 4 and x equals positive 7. Flip your factors. Biggest mistake is students just forget to flip their factors at the end, which isn't a big deal. Just remember the X method factors, to get solutions, you flip them. 2 to go! 2 to go. Your quiz is also on Thursday. Example 3. I threw a little curveball in on this one. Do you see it? I put a number in front of our x, so that will just change it a tiny bit, but still the same. Okay, so I have a radical, which means I'm going to raise both sides to the second power. Raise the left side to the second power, and raise the right side to the second power. On the left side, we just drop down negative 2x plus 6. Now on the right side, we have to be careful. 2x squared. What is 2x times another 2x? 2x times 2x would give us 4x squared. What do you think a lot of people will write instead of 4x squared? They'll just write 2x squared. They forget to square the front number too. Remember, 2x in parentheses to the power of 2 means 2x times another 2x. So it becomes 4x squared. We're going to get everything over to one side, so let's subtract our 4x squared over to the other side, put it right in the front. On the right, they cancel and become 0. So we have negative 4x squared minus 2x plus 6. Now before we do the x method, what do you notice about negative 4, negative 2, and 6? What can you do to all of those? You divide them all by 2. If you forget to do this step, not the end of the world. You'll still get your answers. But the smaller we make our numbers, the easier the X method will be. When we divide all of these by 2, we'll be left with negative 2x squared minus 1x plus 3. So my A value is negative 2. My B value, negative 1. C value is 3. Draw your X. Again, if you did forget to divide by the 2, it'd be fine. You'd still get your answer. You just might have to do a little more simplifying. A times C, negative 6. B value, negative 1. Divide both sides by A, negative 2. We need to multiply to negative 6, and then add up to negative 1. The only 2 ways to make negative 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and negative 3, the pair that adds up to negative 1 is 2 and negative 3. Two divided by negative 2 is negative 1. Negative 3 divided by negative 2 is positive 3/2. Those are your factors. So our solutions we flip. X would be positive 1, and X would be negative 3/2. There we go. What do we got? One left? We're done today. One left. We're about to be on example 4, and then once we're finished with example 4, I'll go back to this one and you can get it copied down. Okay, last one. Last one for the day. Same thing. We get rid of our radical by squaring both sides. Square the left, square the right. When we square the left side, we drop everything down. Negative 45x minus 36 equals, this is the tricky part, 3x squared becomes 3x times another 3x would give us 9x squared. 9x squared. In order to use the x method, we need everything on one side. So we can subtract our 9x out to the front. That way I get everything equal to 0. So I'll have negative 9x squared minus 45x minus 36. Now, if we were to do the x method right now, it would be terrible, because we'd have to do negative 9 times negative 36 for the top, and that's some huge number. What can you divide negative 9, negative 45, and negative 36 by? Can't do 3, but there's a bigger one. 9. We're going to divide them all by 9. I would even do negative 9. Then we'll have all positive numbers. But either one would work. So when we divide negative 9, well, what's left is 1x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. And this is my A, B, C. A is 1, B is 5, C is 4. Look how nice that is. Draw your x. A times C is 4. B on the bottom, 5. Divide both sides by 1. Look at how nice and little our numbers are. Much easier to find. Whereas if we didn't divide out that 9, we would have had a humongous number up top. We would have had a negative 45 on the bottom, and it would take us a while to find the two numbers. There's only one way, or two ways to make 4. We can either do 2 times 2, or 1 times 4. So the one that adds up to 5 would be 1 and 4. 1 times 4 is the top, 4. 1 plus 4 is 5, the bottom. So we have 1 on the left, 4 on the right. Those are factors. Our solutions are the opposite. -1 and -4. That is the last type of radical equation you need to be able to solve on your quiz day, which is Thursday. So we have practice tomorrow. We have a practice quiz we always give the day before on Wednesday. And Thursday we quiz. Friday we do a little activity and start the next topic. And then we have the 4 days before spring break. And then we're done for a while. That's it.